I remembered this time. All right, perfect. Thank you. So I want to publicly thank our co-sponsors for our Undergraduate Research, Scholarship, and Creative Activities Conference, and that's Undergraduate Education, Student Affairs, University Library, and Global Affairs. Thank you so much for your continued partnership and ensuring that our conference gets better and better each year for our students. I also want to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement. And when I'm doing this, I'm specifically talking about the land that UC Davis occupies. And I encourage each of you to look up the indigenous land in which you are currently on. We should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been home to the Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: Kachili Dihi Band of Winton Indians of the Kusla Indian community, the Quetzal Dihi Winton Nation, and the Yotjat Dihi Winton Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. And so I want to take a moment to point everybody to, thank you, Sarah, for sharing that link to help everyone figure out and learn more about the indigenous lands that you are currently on. So we have the pleasure of having a wonderful panel of folks who have experience in mentoring, supporting, or conducting research as an undergraduate student in the STEM, or supporting and mentoring students in the STEM as well. And so I want to take a moment to have each of our panelists introduce themselves and just let us know who you are, where you work on campus, and any other little information, fun fact you'd like to share with us. So first, I'm going to welcome Dr. Zhao to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Li Yan. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Cell Biology and Human Anatomy. And my lab is in the Tupper Hall main campus next to the Aggie Stadium. And my lab studies basic cell biology. So it's a biology lab. And we study the centrosome. It's the tiny organelles in the cells and how that dictate the cell functions and development. So mainly we use cell biology techniques, some fancy microscope to do these light imagings of fixed cells imagings, and we also use zebrafish model to study the development. And my lab in the past 6-7 years, we have several undergrads actually and coming through, and that's a good kind of main force of my lab, undergrads and technicians, and now I have 1 grad student. But yeah, so I think it's wonderful to see so many people interested in the research, So and that's really glad to see. And I think UC Davis on campus, there are many opportunities, many labs. They would really welcome those undergrads to do research. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Sarah Stinson.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah. I am a PhD candidate in the ecology grad group, and I work in 2 different labs, one in the entomology department and also one in the vet school in anatomy, cell, and physiology. And for a little bit of background, I was an undergrad here at Davis. I was a transfer student. I came from a community college and came to Davis, and I know some transfer students have a lot of anxiety about starting the research process because they don't have as much time as maybe someone who's planning to be here for 4 years or so. So I can offer a little bit of perspective about that, although it was a little while ago. I took a break in between undergrad and grad school in the workforce. So I came back to the university to pursue my PhD. And I found not 1, but 2 amazing mentors who agreed to take me on as their student. And it's been a really interesting process. And during that time, I've had the chance to work with a lot of different undergraduates, either as assistants with my own projects or helping to hire undergrads for other projects going on in both of those two labs. So I'm happy to share my experience in that process as well. Some of the work in, I should say who my mentors were, I forgot to say their names. Dr. Sharon Lawler in nematology and entomology, and then also Dr. Richard Connon in vet school APC. And in Dr. Connon's lab, we also work with zebrafish, so yay, team fish. But I also do a lot of work with invertebrates as well. So looking at environmental toxicology and how agricultural pesticides are affecting aquatic organisms. So that's been really, really interesting for me to study that. So I'm happy to be here. I'm glad to be sharing my experience and to learn from all of you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Sarah Sheridan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and my pronouns are she, hers. I'm a fourth-year undergraduate majoring in biochemistry and molecular biology at Davis. I guess a little bit about my little bit of background as an undergraduate is that I first was interested in neuroscience, and so I joined Dr. Peter Janata's lab as a first year and studied the relationship between music and memory. And then after that, I joined Dr. Jennifer Whistler's lab, who focused more on like molecular biology, and she studies opioid receptors in the brain. So that was really cool. And then this past year, I joined a biotech, and their name is Hygieia Biological Laboratories. So I can talk about that as well. And I'm excited to meet you all and hope we can connect. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And Matangi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matangi. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am also a fourth year genetics and genomics student. So a little bit about my research background at my time in Davis. So I was in Dr. Megan Dennis's lab at the Genome Center, and I studied human-specific segmental duplication. So segments of the genome that were uniquely duplicated in the human lineage. And that was a really great experience. I got to be in that lab for the past 3 years. And then over the last summer, I got to do an internship in San Diego where I got to look at stem cells and lung organoids. And it was a bit of different research. So one in more of an evolutionary perspective and one a little bit more clinically relevant biology, that field. And I also recently applied to graduate school. So I have a little bit of background on just going through that process as well.
Great, thank you. Well, as you all can see, we have a great panel here tonight, and I have a couple questions to start us off, but what I would really love is for this to be a dialogue, just as if we are just sitting around, maybe, a bonfire, having a conversation. So I would invite everyone to drop your questions in the chat, or you can use the raise hand function in your Zoom. But to start us off, I'm going to start with, actually, Matangi, I'm going to start with you and talk about, see if you could talk a little bit about what are some of the common myths undergraduate students have about undergraduate research?
I think one really big myth is like there's only like a small short time period in your undergrad where you can really get involved. Some people say like first years never get research positions, and then some people say like if you don't get a research position in your first 2 years, that will be really difficult too. But at least from my experience, like I had a hard time finding research in the beginning of my freshman year, and so I really like benefited from going to the URC and going in for drop-in hours to really beef up my resume. And one thing they really told me was you'll find research when you're ready for it or whenever you like seek to find it. So there's only like this tiny short frame of window that you can get involved. It's like throughout your 4 years or however many years you're at Davis.
Sarah Sheridan?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think especially when you mentioned going to the URC and going to their office hours. I'm not trying to like advertise the URC, but naturally, it is a great program and it's very helpful for students. So I highly encourage people to go there, and they can, help you out with your like writing emails, figuring out what kind of labs you want to join, and just really get down to the basics on like what you need to do before joining a lab. And yeah, I totally agree. Join join whenever you want, join when you're ready. I'd really wanted to do research, so I joined as soon as I could. But if you maybe don't want to do it or you're debating about it, like you don't have to do it. And I think wanting to be there really makes a difference. So just join when you want. And I don't know. Yeah, I think some people encourage people to join maybe their third or fourth year, but if you feel like you want to have that experience, then you should just go for it. So yeah, I agree.
I think I'm next. I believe I neglected to mention in my introduction that I'm also a TA for the Undergraduate Research Center. So that was important, and I should have mentioned that. And in that role, I do a lot of the advising sessions that Matangi and Sarah just mentioned, virtually now, but in person before the pandemic as well. And a lot of the myths that I've heard from students about getting into research are some of what Sarah and Matangi have already mentioned, specifically about the timing. So is it too late? Am I going to be able to find something even if I'm a transfer student or even if I'm a senior? And it really is a matter of how much effort the student is willing to put into finding the position, because the more time you spend looking for research opportunities and the higher number of opportunities you apply for, the greater your likelihood of getting one of those. So I think a lot of times students are easily dissuaded because maybe they aren't successful the first time they try. So maybe they reach out to a faculty person, and for whatever reason, the faculty person can't accept them or doesn't respond to the email or whatever it is, they get really discouraged. So I would encourage students here to be persistent and keep trying. And also, if you don't hear back from somebody, send them a reminder email. I think a lot of students feel maybe unsure about the etiquette there of when it's appropriate to send a follow-up email. And I have been on the other end of that situation where students have emailed me about opportunities, and I was very busy with experiments and I didn't get back to them. And then when it's not the first email in my inbox, I completely forgot to respond to them. And so having them be persistent and give me a reminder was very helpful. So I think there's a myth that maybe if you don't hear back, you should just give up on it. So definitely send at least one follow-up email 1 to 2 weeks after, if you haven't heard anything, would be a good idea.
Dr. Zhao?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'm the person, usually I miss those emails. So I think it's good to send those reminder emails. And also I feel it's good to join some of these, I don't know, like a chapters. For example, I got several students coming from the ASB and B student chapters on the campus. So that's American Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. And like those kind of society, usually they have a lot of those networking opportunity. They invited faculty speakers to give an introduction about their research or have some lab tour. So at one time, these chapters tour my lab. So I think I think I agree with all the all these previous panelists to say just keep trying. And one thing I think the tips of writing the emails to the faculty is that you want to get attention from the faculty. You want to write an email, indicate why you want to join this lab. So you want to do a little bit of research, a little bit of study, right? Go to their website, or if they don't have a website, at least they have some faculty, of official department page, and to learn a little bit of their research first, and then you write an email, try to say why, give the reason why I'm coming to this lab. because I think then that's the, you know, then when I read the email, or when people read the email, then it's, okay, this student is kind of serious, and he or she knows what they want. So I think that's kind of important. So don't just shoot a random email, you know, just spend some time to study that faculty first, and then send. So yeah, I think that's my comments.
All right, great. Thank you for that. And that actually is a great confirmation, because that's what we tell students. Do your research about the opportunities that you are looking for. So thank you for that confirmation. And I'm going to ask Sarah Sheridan to share, what does writing a follow-up email sound like? And I know
Yeah,
Sarah
that's-
Stinson threw a link down there, but just for the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's important to remember that you're not being rude, right? Like you're just saying like, hello, I'm still here. I'm still interested. And that's totally fine. And that's actually a compliment, right? Because you're like, I'm waiting for you. Like you're important to me. So, so don't think you're being rude about it at all. And you know what, I actually, so what I did is I sent this email, and it was kind of like a cover letter, right? It was like saying like why I'm interested, what's unique about them, how do I imagine myself joining. And so if, yeah, I would sort of pair it like a cover letter then, and then in the follow-up email, I kind of wanted to give a strong hint that I was sending a follow-up. And so I actually forwarded the email that I had previously sent. It said, hi, I just wanted to follow up with you, in that forwarded email. And said, yeah, I just wanted to follow up with you. I'm very interested in joining. And then I like retook some of those paragraphs from the cover letter and put them in, but just made it very brief, because I think that sometimes, you know, faculty are so busy that sending a long cover letter is really, really nice, and it shows that you're really dedicated, but they don't always want to read that. And so I just sent like a few sentences on my interest there. And maybe Dr. Zhao can talk more about that in terms of like how long of an email is too long? Do you actually read all of them? You know, what's important in email? Should you craft it so that they look at certain parts? Should you like bold certain parts? Stuff like that might be interesting to know about. But yeah, that's what I would say about it.
Yeah,
Dr.
I think.
Zhao, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the important thing, you know, get to the point first. I mean, quickly. You know, in the beginning of the email, you try to get to the point. You know, you don't want to say something very long, and then on the second paragraph, and then you get to the point. I think you just get to the point quickly. I know, of course, everyone is different, but I think for most people, probably they don't have that much time. So you want to catch the attention, to have a right subject line, right, and attach a good cover letter. And I think also make it neat, right? So it just want to make everything, you know, nice. So write a nice letters, and I think the email could be pretty short, and then the detail you could put in the cover letter, you know, send us a attachment, and yeah, I think that should work. If yeah, again, I think you should try several faculties. It's you know, it's difficult to know, you know, who is available, who is taking students, but keep trying. I think that's the right strategies.
Great, thank you.
Can I add something onto that?
Absolutely.
I think Dr. Zhao made some great points, and also the emails that I've been most impressed with from students often include a resume or a CV, because that's information that my PI wants to have from prospective student volunteers or employees in our lab. So if you go ahead and you just include your resume or CV before we ask for it, it shows that you're thinking ahead and that you know that that's information that we may want from you. Also, there are some fundamental lab safety trainings that you can do ahead of time. Even if you don't have any experience in research, you can go online, you can get all that training done. So then when you write that initial email, you can say, you know, here's why I'm interested in your lab specifically. This is the research that will help me in my career, but also I feel I would be a good addition to your team. And look, I've already gone ahead and given you all this information that I know you're going to need and ask for eventually. So that shows the person who's reading it that you're thinking one step ahead of them. And you can find some of those basic safety trainings on the URC website, and I can find the link too if you want.
So thank you, Sarah. Sarah's been our link finder for sure. So, all right. All right. Any tips on writing resumes? So the Internship and Career Center has some great examples of resumes. They have actual examples of resumes. And so that is something that I would look there as well. But see. So let's see. Describe what collaboration looks like in your experience as researchers. What does collaboration look like in your labs, in your experience? Anyone can start.
I guess I could go briefly. So speaking like from an undergrad perspective, like your collaborations are really going to be your graduate student mentors. And so that's really where I learned the most in both the labs I was in. So like you come up with your own questions, or you work with your grad student mentor to come up with questions, and you're really working together throughout the process, and you can choose to be as independent as you want. But I came in to a lab where I'd only taken Biz 2A was the first bio related course I'd taken. So I really was dependent on a graduate student mentor to collaborate with me and lead me to papers and scientific questions so that I can like build my knowledge past that. And even previously, like working in a lab where I did have a little bit more research experience, I still really not only depended on the graduate students, but all the other internship students, where all our projects were different, but like we had to like bounce questions off each other in order to understand like the nuances that our research projects entailed.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll add something to that. Matangi, that's so great that you brought that up, because I think that in STEM specifically, sometimes people underestimate the importance of your community. So that could be professional collaboration, it could be people you socialize with, but you really need to rely on those interactions to learn more and to develop your own research, but also to support your lab and your community. So I think that that's something that makes everyone's jobs a little easier when you have a team of people that you can rely on. And I definitely have had projects where I needed to rely heavily on my team, which were mostly undergraduates. So I had a project that was a mesocosm experiment out in Pewter Creek, and we would have very long days. And I really needed all of them to show up every day, because if they didn't, we couldn't get the work done. And they were amazing, and they really, they understood their role, and I tried to make them feel important and valued in that experience. And I couldn't have done it without them. So I think that it's important to be able to rely on your team, whoever that is. Also, I wanted to mention that I know that sometimes being a volunteer in research is not an option for students that are not financially supported. And I think that sometimes students don't know how to ask for paid positions, or to know if a paid position is an option. And I wanted to bring that up. I don't know if now is the right time, but I'll just bring it up. But you never know if there may be funding for a project. In the Conan Lab, one of my PIs, he asks that students start as volunteers so that they can build a relationship with the student, make sure that they're going to show up when they're asked to show up, do what they are asked to do. But then once they've established that relationship with the lab, then he sometimes will hire them on as paid students. And for students who are at the end of their undergraduate experience, so seniors, sometimes those undergraduate research experiences can lead to post-grad opportunities. So there are positions called junior specialist positions, And depending on the funding in the lab, of course, there may be an option for you to stay on as a junior specialist, which is a great transition between undergrad and graduate school for you to get some more experience. They're limited term appointments, so I think you can only be a junior specialist for 18 months for some of them. But that may be perfect if you want to take a year off in between undergrad and graduate school. So I think don't be afraid to ask if those are options once you get into a position.
Yeah, I can add some financial things. So yeah, I have to admit, most of the lab they hire the undergrads as unpaid volunteers, and it's one of the reasons is that it's kind of difficult to have that category from the government fundings, to have that category to pay undergrads. That's one of the reasons why that's the case too. But I think one potential source is the work study. So if you are eligible for work study, then you can apply for that. And then when you work in the lab, I think then that's actually 75% of your time will be paid by the work study. So a lot of labs, a lot of PI, they are willing to hire students like that. For example, the fish facility, we have students doing the feeding maintenance, and they are all work study students. And actually, one of the work study students actually kind of transfer, into the research position in my lab. And then eventually, after she graduated, she became the junior specialist. Yeah, so yeah, that's what Sarah mentioned. So that's like a pathway. But I have to admit, it's kind of difficult to find a paid, volunteer position in the lab, especially in the beginning. But it's possible, in some labs, it's possible.
Great. Thank you for that, Dr. Zhao. It's great to hear that faculty are putting out that opportunity for work study students to join. So Alexandra has a question in the chat into relating to balance. She's curious about how you're able to juggle classes with research. So why don't we start with Sarah Sheridan on that one?
I think it's I think it can be a challenge. Something that I've struggled with. I really love going into lab, and it's difficult for me to prioritize, honestly, school over lab, because I think that's what students should be doing, right? Is you're a student first, and then you come into lab. So I think what's helped me is really kind of tracking my hours and my dedication, right? So like every day, I have to think about, like, if I go in a lab in the morning and I stay till the afternoon, how much time is that going to give me to study in the evening, right? And so really gauging that proportion of my day and how that's working out. Some people are really strict about their hours in terms of like up to, 12 to 15 to 20 to whatever hours you want to commit. And so, people have different strategies, but yeah, that's kind of been my strategy is really thinking about like the day-to-day portions of like, actually what portion am I dedicating my day to school versus to lab. So Matangi, I'd love to hear your answer to that as well.
I mean, I definitely second everything that Sarah said. When I first joined a lab, it was really like, not just like, I'm not sugarcoating it at all, where it was pretty difficult to balance both school and lab, because I really loved being in lab all the time. And then I would forget that I'd have to like go back home and study for my midterms. I'll just like, so that I'm not repeating anything that Sarah said, just to add, I would just be like really honest with who you're working with in the lab. Like during midterms week, I'll like just say like, hey, it's midterms week. I might have to dial it back this week, and I can like compromise by coming in a little bit more next week. So that was something that was really helpful. And then, yeah, just being really, really communicative. And what's really nice in the lab that I was in Davis was we had a student calendar. So we'd write down all the hours that we'd be in lab, so that not only could you see it, but like the PI and all the graduate students could see like what hours you're in, and you could even like write notes, like this is midterm week, so I'm like reducing hours. And so that was really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, I think Matangi, you bring up a really good point. Communication is key. That's true for undergraduates and also for graduate students too. Sometimes in research, especially when you work with live animals, they don't care if you have a final. They still need to be fed. They still may be, you may need to care for them. So I think it's important to communicate with the other people in your group and make sure that you're not overwhelming yourself unnecessarily. So if, as a supervisor, if I don't know that you have something stressful going on, then I won't know how to help you. So it's important for undergrads to have good communication with their supervisors. And sometimes that means being a little bit proactive. So you may need to reach out and say, hey, I don't know if you already are aware of this, but midterms are coming up. I want you to know I have this really big paper due as well. And these are the hours I've committed to. I'm happy to fill those, but I just want you to know that I can't commit to anything beyond that or whatever the situation is. So I think it's something that sometimes students feel intimidated about speaking up for themselves in those situations. And I think the tendency for students is to say yes, even if they can't commit to it. But you're really doing yourself a disservice if you do that, because it will look worse if you say yes and can't follow through versus if you say, I'm sorry, no, I can't commit to that. So don't feel like you have to say yes to things when you know that you can't commit to them. That's true for graduate students a lot because we have a lot on our plates. I'm sure it's true for PIs as well. But you really, it's a skill to be able to say no to things. So I think practicing that early on is a good thing. And you can say no politely. But oh darn, I'd really, really love to spend more hours counting embryos under the microscope, but I have this other obligation. I'm so sorry. So I would just advise people to just be honest and say what you're able to do, and so that you're so the expectation matches the reality.
Yeah, and I also want to, yeah, that's a very good point, communications. And I also like to, have these expectations lay out right in the beginning when I have these students come in. So yeah, usually, of course, you're gonna have spend less time in the lab during the midterms, or these exam weeks. I think that's totally, reasonable. And but it's really important to communicate beforehand, and also to plan ahead. Yeah, if you know you're gonna have a some big exam coming, and then when you plan your experiments, you need to think about it, right? So you don't want to do those very do those kind of big experiment, but in the middle of the midterm weeks, and you cannot finish. So I think to think everything ahead, good communications, I think are the keys.
Great, thank you. And we have a hand up. So Jonathan, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. If I may, I have a few questions that I'd like to ask. And if I can, I'd like to start with a bit of the broader questions before going into a little more details. The first question I have is, as someone with experience with more of the humanities side of research and not that much experience of STEM research, what can I expect? What would be different, and what should I prepare myself for?
Excellent question. Who's ready to take that one on?
Okay, unless somebody else has done like, so so I've done, I haven't done like humanities research per se. I was in the psychology lab. And so in the psych lab, I would do a lot of like online stuff. I would work with like Excel sheets, and it was a lot of like working on the computer, dry lab, and communicating with people as the data. And that was really interesting. And switching into a wet lab, I was working with enzymes, right? So I think maybe just the overall dry lab versus wet lab feel a little bit was unique. And switching into like a benchtop space took some getting used to, and at first maybe it was a little bit intimidating, right? But I think you just kind of get used to the space, and over time feel comfortable, and you learn that it's more of a playground, really. So that's what I would have to say.
That's a great question, Jonathan. When I was an undergrad, I wanted to be a double major in evolution and ecology and also in medieval studies. But because I was a transfer student, I had too many units. So I did have some experience with history and the Latin courses on campus, although not very much research experience in that field. I think there's a lot of transferable skills that you can apply to STEM that you may have gained in if you had previous humanities research experience. So looking at primary literature, that's something that you're going to do in pretty much any area of research, I believe. So being able to critically evaluate a paper and understand what the researchers were trying to convey, how they did their research, all of that is going to transfer directly to STEM. Also, the skills that people who are hiring undergrads are looking for, there are a lot of transferable skills that would apply across any discipline. So I would much rather hire an undergraduate who will show up on time and be enthusiastic and excited about what we're working on versus someone who has a lot of technical skills. And my PI also has said that sometimes when a student comes in already knowing how to do a technique, we may have to retrain them because they may have learned it in a different way in another lab than what we would like to do in our lab. So I don't think you should feel intimidated if you haven't experienced the wet lab or the technical skill set yet. Because in the end, if you show up and you're there and you are learning and you're excited to be there, that really is more important to me in my research experience than someone who already knows how to pipette. I can teach you how to pipette. I can't teach you how to show up on time.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's don't don't get intimidated by that. I think a PI, they are looking for students, they are motivated. So if you are really motivated, you're really eager to learn, I think there's no problem. You can always starting from the beginning, and everything else you can pick out later. So, but I think that attitude is really important. And before I have an undergrad, he was a psychology major. He had no no biology background at all. But and now he was doing quite well. So just that kind of if you have the motivation, you have the attitude, I think you have your opportunity. A lot of people will take you.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, you said you might have another question?
I do, if I may, getting into a little bit more of the specific questions, specifically to Sarah Stinson, you mentioned that there are a few lab safety things that applicant for a lab can do. And I was wondering, with the link that you sent in the modules there, which ones are the most important?
Ooh, that's a good question. So let me go back to that link and I will, oops, sorry, hold on. And then I can look at them with you. So in our lab, we do UC Laboratory Fundamentals, which is the first training under laboratory researchers. And I would say that that one is the most important because that's something that I think almost every lab on campus requires if you're going to be working in any situation with potential hazards, chemicals, something like that's pretty common no matter what type of research you're doing. So I would start with that one. And you may need to set up an account if you've never logged in before. And it's been a while since I've logged in or heard from students who have logged in. So this may not be relevant anymore. Maybe Matangi or Sarah can tell me if they've done it more recently. But if you try to go to the link and it doesn't work, you may have to email them and say, I'd like to set up an account to do the safety training. And you don't have to give them a reason why. They don't need a PI to authorize it. You can just email them. But I would say that's the best one to start with. And it's pretty basic. It's not, don't feel like you have to study too hard for it. It's going to be things that mostly are intuitive, you know, like if the building's on fire, don't stick around and put it on TikTok. That's not a real example, but you know what I mean. Don't be intimidated by the training.
All right. Do you have another question, Jonathan?
One last question, if that's okay. And I feel like
Absolutely.
anyone can answer. Yeah, thank you. I feel like anyone can answer this, but maybe Dr. Zhao, you might know a little more about this. I was wondering about research opportunities over the summer that some of us can get started in, and if you have any insight, or if anyone here has any insight about that.
This summer, I'm not sure if the campus will allow undergrads to go back to the lab. That's the thing. I'm not 100% sure. But again, you know, if it's allowed, you can apply to my lab. I can interview you. Yeah, if you're
There
interested
you
in our
go.
research. Yeah, but I think that's my only concern. I don't know if the campus is totally open yet. But if it's open, I think you just go through the, you know, the faculty web pages and then looking for which one, you know, which lab you are interested in, and start to send the emails. And sometimes they also post. Before it's called Aggie job links, but now maybe called Handshake or something. There's a different name. They post on summer internship opportunities on campus too. So you can also look into that. Yeah, so I think either you directly email the PIs or looking for those ads. I think probably that's the two big thing you can look into.
Yeah, and Sarah, right on point, just drop the link for a Handshake. And I will say also another way to find out about opportunities, whether they be in the summer or during the academic year, is by joining listservs, whether it be your department listserv or the URC has a listserv. We often get faculty who email us that say, hey, I have this position open, can you send it out? And so we will do that as well. And so in terms of Dr. Zhao's question about research in this upcoming summer on campus, so right now there's no plan to open up research until the fall quarter. However, research is still taking place. So I would definitely take Dr. Zhao up on his offer and email him, and then also get on some other faculty members' pages and things like that you can look at. And the URC is also available in the summer if folks needed any additional support. Anyone else want to chime in on Jonathan's last question?
Yeah, just that brings up a good point, about emailing faculty. So even if there isn't an open position listed on their website or on Handshake, it doesn't mean that they aren't looking for students. So if you find a lab that you're very excited about, they're doing research that you're interested in, it never hurts to reach out and send them an email and ask if there's a position open or if there will be a position open. You can make yourself a spreadsheet of the name of the faculty person, the link to their lab website, when you emailed them, and then let's say you get a response that says, oh, not now, but in the fall. You can maybe set yourself a calendar reminder to email them and follow up with them before fall quarter. And that way you have this list of resources that you're creating so that you can go back on that and follow up with those people. So I encourage students to take a chance and just reach out and ask and just see if there's something that might be available. I know my PIs are both not very active about updating their websites, and they usually pawn that off on some grad student who's also not very active at updating it. So you never know. They may be desperate for help and they just haven't gotten around to advertising it yet. So I know with our research, we do a lot of environmental sampling. So when there's the first rain events at the beginning of the year. We have samples that we have to collect, and then experiments that we have to set up based on when it rains. And so we really need people to be available, and the timing can be a little bit unpredictable. Or we have experiments that happen in the spring as well, based on our organisms, our species that we study. So you never know. So it won't hurt to reach out and ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add to second what Dr. Zhao said. Handshake has so many research opportunities, and a lot of them like are for students like to like start in the summer and transition into the school year. And then Handshake also has a lot of opportunities for research not on UC Davis's campus, but like if you're interested in research like around whatever area you are, or in a different university, or even different internship opportunities related to research, they have like a rolling list of opportunities for that. And you could even look up like summer REUs, and they're usually all paid summer research internships that have like opportunities for both students who've never done research before and for students who like have started research and are interested in continuing that. And they are open. Like I did one last summer, like peak pandemic. So they're still like open and taking students.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for your questions, Jonathan. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we've got about 4 minutes left. And so I'd like to close out with the panel each answering this following question. If all of us got a case of amnesia and we suddenly forgot everything that was shared here today, what is one thing that you would want students to walk away with in terms of what we've talked about here? What's one thing you want them to walk away with? And anyone can start.
I can start. I would just say, like, don't be afraid and ask a lot of questions. That's my motto in like most things. But like, I was really intimidated to join research in the beginning because I didn't have a lot of like biology background because I was still a freshman. So I'd only taken Biz 2A and the beginning chem series. So I thought I would be coming in with a disadvantage, but you really just have to like ask a lot of questions, and you really like both the graduate student and your PI understands that too, because at one point they were in your same position. So that's one thing that's really helped me like get over imposter syndrome at many different levels, even though it'll always come back. Like you just have to remind yourself, like, don't be afraid and ask a lot of questions.
Thank you, Matangi.
Okay, I can say, I think if you really want to do research in undergrads, I think take it seriously, and that would take a long way. No matter if you want to go to grad school or not. So, for example, the people went through my lab. Some people went to med school. Some people went to grad school, and the skill you learn from the undergrad research is really transferable, to any other fields. You learn how to troubleshooting, you learn how to solve the problem. So you learn how to take the failures. So it's a very good training, but you need to take it seriously. And don't just take it as a check mark on your resume. Really take it seriously and get the most out of it, I think. And that will help you a lot, for any kind of careers afterwards.
Thank you, Dr. Zhao.
Yeah, I could totally add on to that. So maybe this is similar in a way. Take it seriously. Don't treat it as a check mark. Do something that you want to do. I think it's really important. If you want to be there, other people can feel that, right? And that really like kind of helps the process along and helps people engage with you. I was actually a part of the tour of Dr. Zhao's lab a few years ago through the ASBAB, and I got to see Dr. Zhao interact with some of the students. And I got to say that the students that really wanted to be there and were interacting with him, including myself, but people can pick up on that. I think when you're honestly interested and you're happy to be in that environment, I think having enthusiasm basically comes across well.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody else has said. And additionally, it's an amazingly valuable skill to be comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. So when you are in a situation where you don't know the answer, or you feel like intimidated because you're not sure if you are the most competitive applicant, those are the moments when you should take that next step. You should step forward, because that's where you're going to grow and learn new things. And I think people are scared sometimes to step out of their comfort zones. But let me tell you, in grad school, most of grad school is feeling like you don't know anything and feeling uncomfortable. And you just have to push through that, and you have to be accepting of that experience and know that you have to start from somewhere in order to reach a better understanding of your subject matter. So I think that don't let that fear or that feeling of being intimidated stop you from getting where you want to go.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So use your emojis, unmute yourself. Thank you so much to our panelists for taking time to, especially on a Friday, to spend time with our students. Really, really appreciate your time and effort and all the knowledge you've shared. So we will be posting this recording on GoReact. Should you want to share it with folks, you want to rewatch it, that's also an opportunity. Just want to mention that we will be closing out our conference tomorrow on Saturday, May 1st. It's been a great 3 days and can't wait to close it out on our fourth and final day. Our GoReact videos will be available tomorrow until 11:59 p.m. That's when our GoReact site will close. And we also have a closing plenary speaker, Dr. Cynthia Carter-Chang, who will be helping us close out our conference. And then directly after that, our undergraduate research ambassadors, so one is Matangi, one is Sarah, and Mirka also will be there to help end out our conference with a good old jam session featuring a DJ set from DJ REB, who is a current undergraduate student in our at our campus. Sorry, it's Friday. So thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you all, and hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Have a great weekend.